And notice what comes forward in your attention as you change your orientation in gravity and lie on the floor. How do you settle? How do you give your weight to the floor? Can you notice those places where you're more able, or it feels it just happens, that your weight, you feel a pressure of yourself on the floor, your weight, and those places where you don't, where you feel that there are the spaces that we were exploring last week. Bless you. Notice what you sense between your shoulders and the floor. Do your shoulders feel like they're lifted away from the floor or pressing back on the floor or somewhere in between? And does that inform you at all or help you sense the relationship of your shoulder blades with your spine? And how are your arms lying? How close are they to your torso? What distance are your hands from your pelvis? Your elbows from your pelvis? What's the line of your arm? The length of each arm, your right arm and your left. And what sense do you have of how your arms connect with you? Where do you feel your arms begin? Your armness. Notice the length of your spine, your sense of movement as you breathe this morning. Are there still echoes of the lesson we did with breathing yesterday? And sometimes just remembering those sensations or recalling images that you may have had can bring in that organization, create little shifts within us. And please roll yourself up to sitting. And if you're not comfortable sitting on the floor, please sit on a table or a stool or a chair. And find a way of sitting symmetrically if you're on the floor. Then bring your left arm out in front of you. Turn your palm to the left. Bring your right arm across over the top. Turn your palm towards and in your left hand and interlace your fingers. And just see what it's like to do a pendulum movement here this morning. What pathway is your pendulum, the pendulum of your hands, tracing? So if your pendulum is in the horizontal plane, then you're not feeling the weight of the pendulum. So let your arms hang in the middle and then move up to one side down through the middle and up to the other side. And notice how much of you is involved in this movement. What is your head doing? So could you open your eyes and look at where your hands are going? Look at where your hands are going. So that's the same direction. Yeah. That's what some people were doing. And then try turning your head in the other direction. And notice, does it change anything about the quality of ease or how much of yourself is involved in the movement? Now, if you can really differentiate your vertebra of your neck from your thoracic spine and you have the free movement in your thoracic spine, your head, even though it's turning in the other direction, might be shifting in space to allow and support the action of the length of your spine in the direction of your arms. Okay, pause in the middle. The door's locked? Ah. Nina's trying the other one. And change your hands now. Do it so bring your right arm in front of you. Bring your left arm over on top. Interlace your fingers. Just notice whether you've interlaced them habitually or non-habitually. Maybe try non-habitual. How do we find non-habitual interlacing in a non-habitual configuration of our arms? And then explore the pendulum movement. You can let one elbow bend, the other elbow bend, and notice which way of organizing your head with the movement helps the pendular quality. Could you begin to make that movement larger so you start to go up higher as though you're filling in a circle with your hands in space? It's a kind of a circle, so you go up higher and higher each side until you can pass over the top above your head somewhere and down the other side and continue circling in one direction. Do you feel more of yourself being involved with the movement with this crossing of your hands compared to the other? Or is it less? Okay, rest in sitting. Did you notice your breathing as you moved your arms? Whether your breathing was adapting to the movement or there was some moment that you were holding your breath, stopping your breath. Come back, bring your left arm out in front, cross your right arm over the top, palms facing, and interlace your fingers, and begin to explore what it's like this morning to turn your hands towards you and then turn them away from you. Turn them towards you, and when you bring them towards you, do you go towards your sternum or do you go a little bit towards one shoulder or the other shoulder? Could you laugh? Now, the next time your hands are towards you, towards your chest, towards your chin, keep them there and notice the relationship between your left elbow and your right elbow. And find out whether it's possible this morning to bring your right elbow over the bend of your left elbow. Go gently, because this is about sensing yourself and learning to feel what you're doing, and hear our hands and our elbows very quickly come to the foreground of our sensation and our attention. And what is often required, because Moshe was a master in misdirection, is that it's actually more important what's happening through your shoulder girdle, your spine, and your chest than having flexible arms from your shoulder joint as such. And so for some people, it's quite easy. So if it's easy, you may be able to make more distinctions in your sensing by taking it through and coming back, and feeling what's happening in your shoulder, with your shoulder blade relative to your ribs, with your clavicles. What do you do with your head relative to your throat, your eyes? Okay. Uncross your arms and lie on your back and pause for a moment. Could you roll over on your right side and configure your arms in the same way? So as if you were sitting, your left arm goes forwards, your right arm goes on top, interlace your fingers, turn your hands towards yourself, and now begin to explore in this configuration. How could you bring either your left elbow underneath your right elbow, or your right elbow above, in front of your left? Right hand is on the top, crossed over. So left hand first, right hand over the top. Turn your left hand, that's right, palms, yep. On your right side, with your hands intertwined, can you turn your hands towards yourself and explore what difference does lying on your side influence your ability to bring one elbow, your left elbow underneath your right, or your right through and over the top of your left? And what are you doing with your head? So we've done lots of lessons in the last 8 days. Is there something that you learned, some relationships that you discovered in previous lessons that might connect with this? What about that banana shape? What about lifting the head on the side? What about lifting and turning your head? So, was it Einstein that said we're only limited by our imagination? But the difficulty is that often our imagination is limited by our experience. So you could roll towards your back and lift your head. You could roll more towards your head towards the floor and lift your head. And feel through yourself for what relationships might need. So left arm out in front first. Left arm out in front of you, long. Put it long. Straighten your left arm. Turn your palm towards the ceiling. Yep. Put your right arm over the top of your... That's it. So there's something you can find, discover, lying like this, that makes it any easier to either bring your left elbow under your right or your right elbow over and through the gap of your left elbow? Or do you just feel like a pretzel tied up in knots? Okay, roll over onto the other side, onto your left side. Troubles with the rights and the lefts. That's it. That's it. And now we're going to do the same thing on the left side. But you're not trying to turn your arms all the way out and do it. So you turn your hands towards you. Same hand crossed on top, yes. So now you would put your left arm out in front of you, palm down to the floor. Yep. Cross your right hand over the top of your left forearm. Slide the back of your hand on the floor so that your right hand goes underneath your left hand and interlace your fingers. But now you're lying on your left side. And then turn your hands towards yourself. Notice the relationship of your two elbows to one another. So for the left elbow to go underneath the right elbow, what would need to happen through the length of your left side? And with your head, what direction does your chin move in? Does your chin move away from your throat or come closer to your throat? Does your head roll down towards the floor or look up towards the ceiling? Tilt, yes. The only constraint here that's been named, and anything's allowed that isn't prohibited, is the interlacing of the hands. Now, if it's really challenging, you can let go of your hands, knowing that that's what you're doing to find out something about how you could involve yourself, how other parts might be able to participate. And can your breathing continue uninterrupted? So when we stop our breath, because we're making that little bit of the extra effort because we're so close and we want to get it, our nervous system goes into, well, firstly, to stop the breath, you've engaged a lot of muscles through your spine, between your ribs, that may be needed to change a different relationship between your ribs, your shoulder girdle, in order to do this. And when we stop our breath and effort or strain, what we feel is the strain. And there are not many things that are learnt through strain or pain that we will use spontaneously in our actions. Okay, roll over and lie on your back. Please bend your knees. So I'm going to describe another configuration. Can you raise your left arm so your forearm is vertical? Sorry. So your upper arm is vertical and your forearm is parallel to the floor with your hand in the direction of your right shoulder. But your or your right breast, something like that. Bring your left arm underneath your right arm. Sorry, right arm underneath your left. I'm doing really well. adding to a little bit to the confusion. So your arms are crossed at the and put your right forearm against your left forearm. So your hands are crossed, your forearms are crossed. You may even feel that your fingertips or hands are pointing in the direction of your shoulders, but your arms are away from your chest. So it's not one hand on one elbow. It's not one, you're not holding your elbows. Okay. So you can look at your right, you can look at where your arms meet now, yes? You can see it. You can either raise them a bit higher. You can also feel it. So now could you slide your right arm with the same point of contact, slide your right forearm in the direction of your left elbow and then in the direction of your left wrist. But the point of contact on your right forearm that's sliding remains the same. So it's sliding, the point of contact is sliding towards your left elbow and towards your left wrist. So you're actually moving your right arm in the shoulder and where else? Was there a question down this corner? Yes. Pardon? Oh, you lift the shoulder. You need to lift the shoulder. Okay, so the starting position is touched there. Now you're sliding this arm like that. Left arm stays stationary for the moment. Okay, come back to the resting crossing, or rest if you need to. Actually, bring your arms down and rest. No, they're crossed. They make an X. It's like the forearms make an X. Yes, the shape of an X. So come back to the same position. And this time, keep this, you're going to maintain the point of contact on your left arm. So your right arm is always going to be touching the same place on your left forearm, but you're going to slide your right arm on your left so that you move your elbow closer to that place of contact and then your wrist. It's like a soaring motion. You're soaring your right forearm on your left forearm. And listening to your breathing. Different things, yeah. Everyone's got a little different configuration. That's fine. The right is closer to you. So relative to the floor, your left arm is above your right. Relative to you, your right arm is closer than your left. So relative to you, your right arm is closer than your left. Relative to your face, your right arm is closer than your left. So that's your left arm, that's your right arm to be closer to your face, okay? And you're making an X kind of shape. Yes. So what would we like to combine those two actions? We had two actions. One was sliding the right forearm, sliding the point of contact on your right forearm towards the left elbow and the left wrist, and the other was soaring. Both your left arm is stationary. Listening to what's happening in your clavicle, your shoulder blade, your upper ribs, your head. And what direction is your right hand, or where is your right hand moving towards? Or what direction is your right hand going in? Could you do this action in a way that your right hand moved towards your neck or the side of your head? And away. And does your right elbow come anywhere near the crotch of your left elbow? So just for a moment, continue, but press the back of your head on the floor. So your head doesn't move at all. And notice how that influences your movement. And then find some way of involving your head that allows you to make this movement feel easier, more comfortable. Okay, and rest a moment. So I'm not quite sure whether Moshe named this lesson or somebody else did. Jenny, did Moshe name? Do you remember? Did Moshe name this? Or the lessons in Amherst? Yeah, I've got a feeling he didn't. But so bend your knees again, stand your feet. This time you're going to explore those two movements separately. So this time your right arm is still going to be closer to you. You form the X, but you're going to move your left forearm. Slide your left forearm in the direction of your right elbow and then in the direction of your right wrist, maintaining the same point of contact. So your arms are forming an X. Yeah, that's it. Okay, you know it. Good. What does that ask of you? Do you feel any movement of your sternum? Of your upper thoracic vertebra? Your clavicles? Okay, and now do the other action, the soaring action. With your left arm on your right arm. Again, listening for what's happening in the background. Soaring motion, it's of the left arm on the right arm. So your left arm will keep the same point, maintain the same point of contact on your right forearm, on the back of your right forearm, but you're moving your left arm in a way that it comes close, that point of contact changes up and down your arm. So it's sliding. So it's now the point of contact remains the same on the right arm, and when you did it the other way, does it stay the same both ways on the right arm, or is it different? No, it's different. But one movement is a more, I want to use the word perpendicular, it's not. So this lesson, what do you think you might call it? This is a movement that's central in terms of the relationships to the lesson. What do you think? If you put those actions together, so you've got 2 actions of your right arm, 2 actions of your left arm, if you put it together, can you think of anything that it might be like DNA? DNA, yes. Think of playing a musical instrument. Violin. So it's called playing a fiddle. And I think if you, it depends who's playing the violin, I guess. You know, yes, I see some violinists that move their whole body with the arm that's holding the violin and their other arm at the same time, and others that just keep the violin stationary, more stationary in space, and it's one arm movement. Can you do these 4 actions together? And what direction do your hands tend to go in? Do your elbows come towards one another? Can you bring your right elbow towards the crotch of your left elbow as your left elbow comes underneath your right, and bring your hands towards the side of your neck? And then come back out again. Okay, please leave that. Rest on your back. Legs long, arms long. Take a complete rest. So it's very easy to get caught in our periphery. My arms aren't long enough. But what through ourself, what parts of ourself can assist our arms to lengthen relatively? Relative to the rest of ourselves. Please come back up to sitting. Bring your left arm out in front. Cross your right arm over the top. Bring your hands towards you and explore bringing your right elbow into the crotch of your left elbow and back out again. Just see if exploring those movements of your arms has influenced your ease or the possibility of coming closer to this now. Can you when you bring your right elbow through, can you bring your hands around your right shoulder? These are all movements that are within the possibility of our organization. Okay. Think about taking your left elbow underneath your right several times. And then can you think about both together? So I see some people really exploring how they're using their head in space, how the shapes that their spine and ribs can make, and how that influences the possibility of doing this movement. Great. Okay, bring your, unlace your hands, interlace, bring your right arm out in front, cross your left arm over the top, interlace your fingers, and turn your hands through. And first of all, just, can you unbend them a little bit? And in what direction would you unbend them to make it a little easier? Would you go a little to the left? Would you go a little to the right? Or would you go straight out because that's straight? That's the direction that you think they ought to go in. Glad to see nobody's doing that. Feel what needs to happen between your shoulder blades and your ribs in order to straighten your arms, to unbend them in this twisted position. It's really complex differentiation of your shoulder blades with your ribs and your thoracic vertebra. So you're asking all those little costovertebral joints, can you help my ribs bend? Can you help direct my spine a little here, a little there, in a way that makes this easier? Okay, you can let go, but lie down on your left side, and you're going to configure your arms in the same way. And explore bringing either your left elbow through the gap of the angle of your right elbow, or your right elbow underneath your left. So here, the floor constrains your left shoulder blade a little bit. And it makes it, for most people, more necessary to use their head, metaphorically and literally. What direction could you move your head in? Lifting it, turning it, sensing the relationship of your chin to your throat. So these are movements that you may have played with in your primary school, schoolyard hours, but it's unlikely. For most adults, they're really unfamiliar. So they challenge us both to meet ourselves and find out what we do when something's difficult. And I did have the other way of challenge, and it left me. The other way it's challenging. Well, it's challenging physically because your structure hasn't moved in these ways. Okay. Roll over onto the other side and explore it. Now you've got a new pastime when you can't go to sleep in bed at night. And if you share the bed with someone, they'll say, "What are you wriggling for?" What's it like on this side? Is it easier or more difficult? Is it easier to bring one elbow through, the top elbow over, or the underneath elbow under? So really think about using your head, letting your head participate. Lifting it, try lifting it away from the floor. And we spent a lot of time last week exploring how we lifted the head, whether we lifted it directly to the side or whether we turned and lifted it, and how that changed and influenced the shape of our neck, the shape of our upper thoracic vertebra and our ribs. So don't try and unstraighten your arms. Keep them bent when you do it. Keep your hands relatively close to you. Don't try and unstraighten. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Leave it rest on your back. So these, well, many lessons, and hopefully each of you in this room will discover lessons throughout the training that really challenge your sense of yourself, your image of yourself, and give you an opportunity to really examine how you understand yourself in space and spatial relationships, and meet the constraints that you've emplaced, likely unknowingly, on yourself in your daily life. Because that's when we begin to develop choice, where our nervous system is not bound or constrained by those particular habits or inhibitions. Please come up to sitting. And just see what it's like to interlace your hands. See how you do that, which is do you do it because you know you're going to do the habitual, so you do the non-habitual instead? Or do you just do it and then see whether it's the habitual or non-habitual or some other version thereof? So don't twist them, don't cross them now. We're going to see if we can find a way of lengthening our arms. So could you sit with, well, sit however you like. It'll become more evident as we go along. Interlace your fingers habitually first, and you see your arms make a hoop. Yeah, they kind of make a hoop. So how could you organize yourself to bring your right foot and leg through that hoop? So don't try and do it first off, but it actually has something to do, the organization of the leg, your leg, and the rest of yourself has something to do with the first lesson we did on Monday, which, if you're anything like me, the lessons are starting to get a little blurred. But keep playing with it. Yeah, now, can you put your right leg, right foot through the hoop of your arms? And then bring it out again. See if you can do it foot first. And if it's really difficult, you can unlace your fingers a little. Pardon? Foot goes in first. Do you? That's one way. Yeah, that's one way. I'm giving you a broad directive. You've made a hoop with your arms. Can you find a way of putting your right leg through the hoop foot first? So how you begin, how you have your legs to begin with, may be a constraint. Yeah, there's always going to be 1, 2, 3 people in every lesson that get it like that. But for the rest of them, it's like, how's it possible? And when you teach classes, you need to really know how you're doing it. Yeah, exactly. Know how you're doing it to help. So you look at the pathway your leg takes and see, can you find another one? Can you do it in different ways? Yes. Okay, lie down on your back, bend your left leg, interlace your fingers non-habitually, and try the same thing. Try to bring your right foot, thread your right leg through the hoop of your arms. No. It's just maintaining a shape, putting your right foot through. Same foot that you did. Same foot that you did in sitting. Right foot, the other right foot. Is it easier here? And if it's easier, notice how you're using yourself differently. And if it's more difficult, notice what you're doing. So we got our fingers habitually or non-habitually. Change it. Whichever way you've got your fingers interlaced, change it. And several times do it. Explore it. Now put your right leg standing and lift your left leg up. And see how is it to bring your left leg through the hoop. Do you use yourself differently? Is it easier or more difficult? Can you feel how this direction, this variation, exploration, makes you move your head? It brings in, it evokes a participation through your shoulder girdle and chest that may be useful in what you were doing previously. Can you change the interlacing of your fingers? And do it several times. And then roll yourself back up to sitting. Interlace your fingers habitually. Put your right leg through your hoop of your arms, foot first. And now, keeping your right leg through, put your left leg through. And breathe and smile and laugh. Pardon? Yes. And then take your left leg out. And then your right leg out. And now that you're not trying to get it quite as much, can you start to listen to what this is asking through your shoulder girdle and chest? What shape does your back make? Banana. Banana, but not in the side bend plane, in a different plane makes a banana. But you may be bananaing going through another plane as well. Yes. Okay, change the interlacing of your hands. Next time your feet are out or in. And now put your left leg in first. And then your right leg. Take your right leg out first. And then the left leg. And notice if there's any tension in your jaw, your tongue. Whether it helps or not. Or whether it's, what did we have yesterday? Using energy unnecessarily. How reversible is this movement? How many times could you do it? Is it sustainable? That can often give you a sense, can be another criteria for determining whether you're efforting or not. Okay, let it go. Lie on your back. Please bend your knees, interlace your fingers. So each time you're going to explore interlacing habitually interlacing non-habitually. But now on your back, can you bring your right leg through first and then your left? Take your left out first and then your right. Are your legs more active than your arms or your torso and head? Try, if it's comfortable, could you interlace your legs with your arms, bringing both legs through the hoop of your arms together. So at the same time. Feet first. And can you take them out together? Try that with your hands, fingers interlaced habitually and non-habitually. Okay, roll over onto your right side. Interlace your fingers habitually. And see, which leg would you bring through the hoop of your arms first, lying on your side? Would it be your upper leg or your lower leg? So can you bring your one leg through and then bring the other leg through? And you can roll a little bit towards your back. So I didn't exclude that. Find out how much do you need to roll towards your back? And what does the rolling onto your back allow that you didn't notice or haven't found, if it's possible, when you're lying on your side? And roll yourself onto your other side. Change the interlacing of your hands. And explore bringing first one leg into the hoop of your arms. Do you choose the same leg that you chose first on the other side, or your other leg? Okay, leave it, roll over and take a pause on your back. Listening in that pause. The first moment you come to your back, do you sense yourself differently? Do you sense your contact with the floor a little differently than to when you began? Or maybe you notice some places are now meeting the floor that weren't before, or some places that are lighter on the floor that were heavier before. Please roll yourself up to sitting. Bring your left arm out in front of you. Turn your palm to the left, cross your right arm over, interlace your fingers, turn your hands towards yourself, and explore what it's like now to bring your right elbow through the gap, through the angle of your left elbow and back out. And your left elbow underneath your right elbow. So make sure you're beginning, if you're, don't start with the same crossing of your arms. My instructions will not make sense to you. So it's the left arm out in front, the right arm on top. Then you turn them in. And then it's your right elbow coming through on top. So keep your hands close to your chest. If you straighten them, it's a different, that's a possibility, but it's not going to allow you to slide your elbows one under the other or one on top of the other. So where your hands are relative to yourself is really important. Okay, bring your arms in front of you again. Change the crossing of your arms because they've always got a preferred. Turn them inwards and see what it's like on this side to take your left elbow through the gap of your angle of your right arm or your right elbow underneath your left. Play with what your head is doing. And your breathing. I'm just going to go. Play with what your head is doing. So we've done all these other movements to give you a sense of how your head can move in space, how your chin can come away from your throat, how your spine can change its shape. Okay, hang out with it. So elbow, we're thinking elbow. Your left elbow is coming over your right elbow. Well, you can do it over that side, but it's likely that organizing yourself in some ways are going to be more conducive to allow a structural organization that allows our breathing to be adaptable and offers the optimal relationships to find that configuration. And sometimes, you know, our history, each one of us has a history in life of using ourselves in particular ways, maybe injuries. And so for some of us, some things take longer to learn. And then it can illuminate how we learn, how patient we are, what we use to facilitate our learning, even. So rest a moment in sitting. Or lying. Actually, rest in lying. It helps me. So Sue's smiling at me as I'm playing with my arms and holding my shoulders and hugging myself. It just keeps me connected to the sensations, some of the sensations you're experiencing, and the directions. It's a tool that we use, can be used in teaching ATM. So please come back up to sitting. And just give yourself a hug. So notice where your elbows are in relationship to one another. So can you Really hold your shoulders from the out. That's it. Outside. So notice where your elbows are. So your elbows can cross quite easily. There's not anybody here that isn't able to cross their elbows. So, pardon? I missed that. Was I meant to miss it? Depends how big you, yeah. Well, it's interestingly enough, whatever we think we have an issue with, or we have some sort of attitudes around, will influence our ability to form a self-image that's required for the movement. Now, take your hands away from your shoulders and see, can you touch your fingertips? Yeah. So now you've got the configuration. Could you interlace them a little bit? Yeah. Okay, so now take your arms away. Now it depends which arm you crossed, which arm you put on first. So we'll just try it one way. I can't predict that. Bring your, whichever arm is easy, if you think there's an easier configuration for you. So for me, mine is right over left. Okay, but for some of you, it's going to be left over right. Whichever is the easiest crossing of your arms out in front, interlacing your hands in that crossed way, bring them through, and now see if you can bring your elbows over one another. Yeah. You see that little gap there? See that little hole? Would anything fit in there? Nina, did you just slide your hands over your head? Okay. Foot? Maybe. Nina, could you take your... Do it, show us, please. So just have a little look at Nina and Julietta. Just so you know. Now, I'm good. So what the rest of us can do is bring our hands to here, take them up to the top of your head, separate them, trace them down the back of your head and meet your fingers at the back of your neck. Who said, yeah, right? Lengthen your arms a little more, Sue, huh? So let them go, let them go. Now another secret is, and then come back. So it's not, you know, Moshe says that achieving something is a gift. You know, the surprise or the satisfaction of being able to do something is a gift that you get. But the most important thing is the learning. So I was playing around this morning with holding a sock. The intention is to hold a sock between my two hands in a way that I can extend the sock but still interlace my fingers. Okay? So you keep the sock there. Now, when you get to this position, you can... Oh, look. Oh, look. So making it easier, so maybe you want to take your sock off. Or give yourself a long stocking, whatever you feel like you need. Because it can be helpful to get an image of the action. And we're always playing this dance. If we can't do the movement, how do we learn how to do it? And sometimes getting the pathway, the bigger spatial relationships can help us, us get something that's an aspect that's needed, a relationship, a sensation. So you've got to be able to let go But so when you cross your arms, you've got to tuck the sock in your hands, hold one end, then interlace your fingers. Then you do the crossing. So you cross them and then let go. So look how much she's changing the orientation of her head. Yeah. Yes, it's harder. So that means To be able to go in one direction and not to go in the other means that there's something you don't understand that you're doing yet. So it's always a big YET. But holding the breath definitely does not. That's good. It's different, huh? Can you smile about it? Okay. What about changing your arms? Changing the crossing. And if you sit symmetrically, it may or may not be easier, depending on whether you're on your easier side or not. So the trick is to learn how to hold the sock between your interlaced hands. So it's like you're holding a bit of dirty washing or something. So you cross your arms, then you hold each end, but then bring your hands together and interlace your fingers. Yeah. And breathing. Yes. How does that chin need to come away, come closer to our throat, come away from our throat? It does look a little like that from this perspective too. Okay, let it go. Lie on your back. And something that can be useful is to actually imagine the movement without doing it. You know, just put your arms in the crossed position and then imagine it. And where you have a jump in your imagination, where you kind of blank out, that will be where you don't have the sensory information to fill in yet, to give you the coordination, to give you the differentiation in order to be able to complete the act, to bring your intention into action. So could you lie on your right side, please? Knees bent on one another. And bring your left hand to hold below your left kneecap. And begin to move your left leg away from your right leg. And just notice how that feels now. Does it feel different than the last time you did it? So do exploring these configurations with our arms related to our spine and torso. You've changed the way those muscles shorten and lengthen. So it's likely that you've got a little more length there in the muscles of your arm, in your back, in your chest. What's it like to keep your knee towards the ceiling now and move your lower leg like a pendulum? Left and right. So you're not straightening your knee. You're not changing the angle. The foot always hangs downward. Sole of the foot toward the floor to begin with. So it's a movement in your hip joint of your leg, but also it's helped by your pelvis, your right hip joint, your spine and your ribs. Let that go. Lie on your back. Did you notice? Was that pendulum movement a little easier? So our brains don't think in terms of a muscle. It's a pattern. So when we learn to coordinate an action, there's a set or matrix of impulses that are organizing the relationships through our whole self to support or to contradict that action. And when you begin to make shifts in one aspect or one relationship that's involved in a pattern, it can spread through your entire self. Bend your knees up and bring your knees over your abdomen. Hold on below your kneecaps with your right hand to your right leg, your left hand to your left leg. Let your knees be comfortably wide apart and begin to roll as we were exploring last week in particular. A little rightward and roll back onto your back, a little leftward. Gradually beginning to, as you roll towards your side, find a moment when pushing your upper knee downwards could roll your torso, transmit through your arm to your head, your shoulder girdle, your upper thoracic vertebra in a way that you would come to sitting. If your legs are too far apart, if your upper leg is still more towards the ceiling, it's more difficult. But once you know how to do it, you can do it any way you like. So you're looking for the moment where moving your upper leg downward, the continuation of that movement smoothly, with your head turning down towards the floor, with your torso rolling forwards and around through space, would bring you up to sitting without any need to add momentum or to jerk or to effort. Could you keep going? So roll to sit one way. You come towards facing the front and then continue and roll down to lie and over your back down the other side. And what do you do with your legs? Notice the softness of your spine, the movement, one vertebra after another, that your pelvis is the bottom of your spine and it's in continual motion, coupling to the length of your spine and your head on top. Does your movement find a head that is willing and soft and hanging to be guided into the movement through space? Can it be a rolling, a continual rolling where there's no bumps, where everything you're doing is transferred into movement? And change directions? That's good. Keep your head as low as you can. So if you weren't here for last week's lessons, your head stays low. Your nose turns down towards the floor. The head is lifted as a consequence. So keep your leg low and you'll find it a little easier. Yep, hang your head down. Hang your head down. Okay, good. Keep your head hanging. Keep it low. Keep it low. Keep it low. That's it. Okay. Take a moment on your back. Lengthen yourself. Notice how you experience your way of lying in contact with the floor now. And then you can roll your, oh, no, notice where you sense your arms, how your arms connect with you now. That was another thing that we noted at the beginning. And please roll yourself however you'd like. Come up to sitting, and via sitting up to standing. Notice what standing's like now for you, how you sense your arms, your way of standing. And then begin to walk. And notice what walking is like now. Do you see? Somewhere between 15 to 20 minute break.